Hi and welcome back to Unreal Engine 101. I'm the Blueprint Wizard, and in our last video we covered the basics of data types and blueprints. Today we're going to take it a step further and explore how to make your blueprints interact with each other. And for that we will dive into three key concepts: casts, blueprint interfaces, and collision spheres. By the end of this video, you should have a clear understanding of how to set up effective communication between your blueprints, making your projects more dynamic and interactive. Let's get started. First, let's open up our blueprints folder here. And let's create a new folder here inside by right-clicking and clicking on new folder. And we call this one Blueprint Interfaces. Let's open this up. And in here, we right-click. And now we go under Blueprint and we select Blueprint Interface. You can also right-click and just type in Blueprint Interface. That will work as well. Like so. Now, let's create the interface, and we call it a BPI underscore interactions. Like so. Now, let's open this up. And in here, we already have one function made for us. Now, let's rename this function to change strings, like so. Now, compile and save this. And now, let's open up our magic cube and our third-person character. And the third-person character should be under Content, Third Person, Blueprints, BP Third-Person Character. Now inside our BP Third-Person Character, we want to add one new variable, like so. And we call this one new, or let's call it player strings array. Now let's change the type to string. And over here, we have to make it into an array. Let's compile and save. And now let's add three default variables into our array by clicking on it and hitting the little plus button here 3 times. Now, our first array element will be player string 1. The second one will be player string 2. And the third one, player string 3. Like so. Now, compile and save this. And let's open up our magic cube. In our magic cube, what we want to do first is let's disconnect these lines here by Alt left click, like so. And let's create a new event here. So right click a new event graph and type in add custom event, like so. And we call this event begin play 2, like so. We could also just create a sequence here and then plug this up here. And the code that we want to run first, we will plug to then 0. But for this video, we just create a new custom event and we call it after our event begin play. So we drag off here and we say event begin play 2. And this will trigger this event as soon as our game starts, as our actor spawns in the world. Alright, now what we want to do from our event begin play 2 is we want to right click over here in our event graph and we say get player character, like so. And our player index will be 0. Now, by default and in single player games, our player will always be player index 0. In multiplayer games, you will have to watch out because of course, we have many players, and you have to specify to which of these players you want to cast. But for now, we will just use this node of player index 0. So from our get player character, which gives us a reference to the class, we can drag off and we can say cast to third person character. That's our player. And this will give us a specific reference to the specific blueprint actor or character that we want to cast to. So from here, from SBP third person character, now what is a cast? A cast is basically a function that lets the compiler interpret the data of another blueprint. Now, if that sounds confusing, all you have to know is a cast lets you access all the variables and functions from another blueprint. Now, what we can do here from SBP third person character, we can drag off and we can say get, oh my, how have we called this array here? 1 second, player strings array. And from SBP third person character, we can say get player strings array, like so. And this will return us our array that we created in our player with our indexes player string 1, 2, and 3. Now, after that, we can drag off our player strings array and we say for each loop because we want to loop through all of our strings here. And then in the loop body, we want to say print string because we also want to print each and every of our array elements onto our screen. So, and after we're done with that, we copy paste this node here. We say done. Let's expand this and increase the duration a little bit. I don't know, 5 seconds should be enough. Or let's go for 10. And we do the same here as well, just so it stays a little bit longer on the screen. All right, now let's comment this out. As soon as we spawn in, cast to our player and grab his player strings array. Okay, and then loop through all player strings, print them to our screen, and inform us when we are done. Now let's try this out. Oh, whoops. 1 second. And now, as soon as we start, the magic cube casts to our player, grabs our array, and prints all its elements to the screen. All right. Now, the problem with a cast, however, is that it creates a hard reference. And let me show you what this means. This is Timmy. This is the user, the player. This is you. And because you are the most important person on this planet, you've got to live in the memory. You're always loaded non-stop. Now, here we have our character blueprint with a very simple piece of code in it. And it says, if our If our hunger is more than 50, we go to eat. And if we go to eat, first we ask our best friend Bob if he's hungry as well. And to do that, we use the cast. Cast to Bob. Now, what this cast does is it effectively invites Bob over to your house, the memory. So, whenever we use a cast, we say, "Hey Bob, come over here, bro. I have to ask you something." And Bob moves from his home, hard drive downtown, straight towards us and into our memory. This is called a hard reference. Now, as long as Timmy, the most important person on this planet, so you, is loaded, which will be all the time, Bob will be loaded into our memory as well. Now, you might say, well, that ain't too bad. I have 16 rooms, whatever. Bob can stay in my house. And that is probably true. But now the problem with hard references is that after you invited Bob to your house, Bob will bring all his family members and all the people that he knows to your house as well. So his family that he casts to, his friends, and maybe his car. His friends, his family, and his car will all be loaded into our memory as well. Now, let's say his friends, his family, and his car, they all also cast to something else. Now, I think you might have guessed it, all these things will be loaded into our memory as well. And this will, sooner than later, cause really, really bad casting chains that will completely trash your memory. So, what we can do instead is, instead of creating a hard reference here with the cast, we can just move Bob back to his hard drive downtown. And instead of calling him over to ask him about how much hunger he has and how much money, we can just use a phone, which is our blueprint interface. And with this phone, we can simply call Bob. Whoops. We can simply call Bob. And if Bob has a phone as well, he can receive our call. And this is our blueprint interface. And if Bob has a phone, which means that he does implement the interface, we can just, this is a blueprint interface slash soft reference. Now, whenever we call Bob and he has a phone, which means he implements the interface, we will load him for just a slight second into our memory until we asked him about his hunger and his money. So we say, "Hey Bob, how hungry are you?" And Bob will say, "Oh, I'm so hungry, my man." Now we ask him, "Bob, how much money do you have?" And he will say, "Well, I only have $2 left." So you could say, "God damn it, Bob, get a job." To which he would reply, "But I already have a job. I'm a game dev." And as soon as we finished with our call, Bob will be gone out of our memory. And he goes back to hard drive downtown. Now, we want to avoid hard references as much as possible. If you have something that is always loaded into your memory as anyways, for let's say, for example, a UI or our game instance and things like this, the player is also always loaded in. You can cast to it, but you should never cast from it to something else that is not loaded all the time anyways. This will really quickly trash your RAM completely. So what we do now is we implement the phone, the blueprint interface. So let's go back to our content folder. Let's open up our blueprints and the blueprint interfaces folder. Now in here, let's open up our BPI interactions interface by just double-clicking it. And let's add a new function in here. And let's call this one change string at index 2, like so. Now, let's select this function and let's add 2 inputs by clicking the little plus button here. 1, 2. And the first one we call index, like so. And the second one we will call new string. Now let's change the type of our first one to integer. And the type of our new string we change to string. Now, let's compile and save. And let's open up our Magic Cube. In here, we want to click on Class Settings. And down here, under Interfaces, under Implemented Interfaces, we click the Add button. And then we just type in the name of our interface, BPI_interactions. Now we select this, we compile and save. And now if we look onto our left panel here, we can see a new tab with interfaces. And if we open this up, we will see both of our functions. So let's right-click on our change strings and let's implement the event, like so. And let's do the same for our change string at index 2. Right-click, implement event, and let's drag and drop it up here. All right, now the first thing we want to do is, from our event change strings, we just drag and drop in our display strings array. Now we say get display strings array. Now we drag off our display strings array and we say set array element, like so. Let's hook that up here. Now the index will be 0 and we change the string of our index 0, which is currently string 1, to, let's say, changed string 1, like so. Let's compile and save this. And now we have to open up our BP third person character. And in here, let's go into our viewport. And here we want to add a collision sphere, a trigger sphere. So we hit the little add button here and we say collision sphere collision. Or you could also go for box. All right, now, after we selected it up here in our panel here, we can just hit the R key on our keyboard, and this will open up this rescale gizmo here. And with that, we can just move this up. Let's see. Let's make it a little bit smaller, maybe, like so. Now let's compile and save this. And in the search bar on the details panel, while you have the sphere selected, type in hidden and deselect hidden in game, just for visualization. Now, let's rename this to collision sphere, like so. Compile and save. Now, if we select our collision sphere here and we remove the hidden from our search bar, we have to scroll all the way down until our events pop up. And here we want to use onComponent begin overlap, this one. So hit the plus button. And this will create a new event in our event graph of our player. Now let's move this over here. Now, what we want to do here is, first, let's also create another event, and this will be F key, and select the keyboard events F. So, and whenever we press our F key, we want to call our change strings function of our BPI interactions. And to do that, all we have to do is on pressed, we say change strings, just type in the name of your function and make sure that you have the message in brackets next to it. Now, what this does is, when we press F, we call this event, change strings. But we will also have to specify a target, so the person that we want to call. And to do that, we use our collision sphere. Now, on component begin overlap. So when our collision sphere overlaps with something, we first want to check what it is that we overlapped with. And this is the other actor. And there are many different ways how you can differentiate in between what actors they are. But for this tutorial, we will just ask if the other actor implements our interactions interface. And we do this by just dragging off our other actor. And then we ask, does implement interface? Now, from here, we select our BPI interactions. And from our return value, we want to say if, like so. Now let's connect this here. And now we want to right-click other actor, and we say promote to variable. Now let's rename this to interactable actor. Let's move it at the end here and connect it to our true pin of the branch. And let's comment this out. As soon as we overlap with something, check if it implements the interface BPI underscore interactions. And we implemented the interface under class settings and add interface here. So whenever we overlap with something, with another actor, we check if it implements the interface, and if it does, it means we can interact with the other actor, obviously. And if it does implement the interface, we save a reference to this object, to this other actor that we overlapped. Now, we need to do this because this is effectively our phone number. This is the person that we want to call if we want to use the interface. So what we can do now is we can drag out our interactable actor and we say get. And now from here, we connect this to the target. Now let's compile and save. And let's go back to our magic cube. And in here, after we set our array element, we want to get a copy of it. So let's drag out our display strings array and say get. Now we drag off that and we say get a copy, like so. And now we want to print it out, like so. Now what happens is, as soon as we press the F button, we have to do one more thing. And here on our F, on our pressed, we have to drag in our interactable actor. And we say get. Now we right click it and we say convert to validated get. And what this does is, as soon as we press our F button, we check if the interactable object even exists. And it can only exist if we already overlapped it. And if it does, so if it is valid, we can do the change strings event. But if not, we will do nothing. All right. Now, let's try this out. We can see our collision sphere here, and it's already overlapping. Let's see. Yeah, we have to move the cube a little bit out of our range. And let's also add a breakpoint here. Let's add a breakpoint here to set interactable actor. Now, let's start the game. Here we see our collision sphere, and as soon as we overlap it, we check if it has the interface in it, and if yes, we set our interactable actor. Now, if we hit play, first it prints out all our regular strings. Because we still have disconnected. Let's disconnect this. And let's add a breakpoint here as well. And we can remove the breakpoint here. And let's try it out. So, we spawn in. Now let's move to our cube and overlap it. And now we press the F button. And it triggers our event change strings. And now if we hit play again, it will print out changed string 1. All right. Let's remove the breakpoint here. And let's comment this out. As soon as event change string gets triggered, change array element 0 to a new string and print it to the screen. All right. Now, let's take care of our second event. Now that we've learned how to use a blueprint interface and a function in it, we also want to let the player specify how our new string in the array should look like. And this is pretty similar, very straightforward. All we have to do is, in our player, let's add a new keyboard event here. And let's say the G key. Let's select this one. And after we press the G, we have to check if it's valid again. So just copy paste this. And if it is valid, we want to say change string at index. If it is valid, we want to say change string at index 2, like so. Make sure you have the message with the little mail symbol on the top right of the node. And as the target, we want to use our interactable actor. And now what we could do is we could get our player strings array like so. Now we get a copy of our array element 0, which is player string 1, and we plug this in to a new string. Now let's compile and save this. Let's go back to our magic cube, and what we're doing here is exactly the same as we did here, just that we this time use the input from our player instead of hard coding our own. So we connect this up here. For the index, we take the index that we input in the player, and for the new string, we take this one. And at the end, we want to print it out. And let's compile and save this. And let's try this out. Now, we hit the play button. We overlap with our cube. And now, if we hit the G button, player string 1. All right. Now, what I want you to do on your own is, I want that you create a new blueprint with a collision sphere. And every time the player overlaps with this collision sphere, I want that you decrease an integer in your player by 10. And if you followed through this tutorial, you should be able to do this with ease. Alright, if you could have learned something, drop me a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And see you next time. Bye.